Okay, let's get into this. Picture this. You've got a 19-year-old kid, a college student, driving home late one night. He misjudges something, ends up with his car stuck in a ditch on some dark rural road.
Right.
He's, okay, not hurt, so he calls his parents for a ride. He stays on the line with his dad. He's walking, trying to figure out exactly where he is in the dark. And then, boom, mid-conversation, he just yells, "Oh, Saint," and the line goes dead.
And that's it. He's never seen or heard from again. That's the chilling start to the whole mystery of Brandon Swanson.
Happened back on May 14th, 2008, out in rural Minnesota.
That's right.
And we've got quite a pile of material here. News articles, police report details, stuff from missing person databases, even threads from online forums where people have been discussing this for years.
A lot to unpack.
Yeah. So our mission today in this deep dive is to go through all this information. We want to try and understand what actually happened that night, figure out why the search got so confusing, look at the different theories people have come up with, and, grapple with why he's still missing after 17 years. What can we actually pull out of all this?
Let's start with Brandon himself. Who was he?
Well, the sources paint a pretty consistent picture. 19 years old, college student at the time. Everyone described him as, really responsible, dependable, not the type to just disappear.
Mm-hmm.
We have a good idea of what he looked like, too. Brown hair, blue eyes, wore glasses, black, wire-framed ones. Apparently, he was legally blind in his left eye. Pierced ears, a little scar over his left eye.
And what he was wearing that night.
Yeah, it's documented, too. Baggy blue jeans, a blue striped polo sweatshirt, black zip-up jacket over it, a white Minnesota Twins baseball cap, white sneakers. He also had on a heavy silver necklace and a stud earring in each ear. Pretty specific details.
So that night, May 13th, going into the 14th, he was celebrating end of the spring semester at his college, Minnesota West Community and Technical College.
Right, celebrating with friends over in Canby, Minnesota, which the sources say is about 30 miles from Marshall, where his family lived.
And the sources do mention he had some drinks, a few alcoholic beverages at the party.
Yeah, but his friends were apparently quite clear he wasn't drunk, not intoxicated when he left.
Yeah.
Capable of driving.
Okay. So he heads home probably around midnight, maybe a bit later into the early hours of the 14th.
Exactly.
Oh.
And he knew the route home to Marshall really well. It was his regular commute for college.
Oh.
But, and this is a key detail, for some reason, this time he decided to take back roads instead of the main highway.
A decision that clearly had enormous consequences.
Definitely. Because those back roads are likely where he ended up getting stuck.
And that leads to the phone call. Just before 2:00 a.m., he rings his parents, Brian and Annette.
Tells them, "Hey, my car's stuck in a ditch." That was a Chevy Lumina he was driving. Said he was okay, not hurt, but just needed them to come get him.
And crucially, he thought he knew where he was. He told them he was near Lind, which is only about 7 miles or so from their home in Marshall.
So naturally, his parents jump in their truck and head out towards Lind to find him. And they stay on the phone with him the whole time they're driving.
Which turns out to be really important, yeah. While they're talking, Brandon's trying to guide them. He says, okay, I'm flashing my lights now. But his parents, they can't see anything out there in the dark.
Right. He even honks his horn. But they can only just barely hear it, like faintly through the phone itself, not through the air.
So that must have been the first sign that something was wrong, that maybe he wasn't where he thought he was.
Exactly. It's becoming clear they aren't going to find each other easily right there at the car.
Mm-hmm.
So Brandon makes another decision. He says he sees some lights off in the distance.
Lights he assumes are from a town, probably Lind, right?
Yeah, he thinks it's Lind. So he tells his parents, okay, forget the car. I'm going to walk towards those lights. Meet me at the parking lot of this bar in Lind.
And he stays on the phone with his dad, Brian, while he's walking for, get this, 47 minutes.
Almost an hour. Walking through the dark, talking on the phone.
Yeah, and during that call, he's describing things. He mentions walking through fields, having to climb over fences. He even says at one point he can hear running water nearby, little fragments of what his surroundings are like.
Gives you a sense of the terrain, yeah. Then it's around 2:30 a.m., maybe a little before, still talking to his dad.
Mm-hmm.
And just out of nowhere, he yells, "Oh, a saint!"
And the line just cuts out. Dead silence.
His parents, obviously panicked, try calling back immediately, again and again. The phone just rings and rings, no answer. Hours later, it finally starts going straight to voicemail.
That exclamation, "Oh," followed by silence. That was the very last thing anyone ever heard from Brandon.
Absolutely terrifying for his parents. They, along with friends, start searching frantically through the night, focusing on that area near Lind where Brandon thought he was.
Then, at 6:30 a.m., they officially report him missing to the Lynn police.
But this is where things get frustrating, according to the sources. The initial police response wasn't great, because Brandon was 19, legally an adult, and there wasn't any obvious sign of a crime.
They basically told the parents, look, it's pretty common for guys his age to stay out all night. They even said it was his right to be missing if he chose to be.
Can you imagine hearing that? It was his mother, Annette, who just wouldn't take no for an answer. Her persistence, the sources say, was absolutely crucial in getting the authorities to take it seriously.
And thank goodness she did.
Yeah.
An official search did get underway later that morning, but then came this huge twist about the location.
Yeah, the geographic bombshell.
Yeah.
The police used cell phone tower data, trying to figure out where Brandon's phone was when he made those calls.
And the data showed he wasn't near land at all, not even close.
Nope. He was roughly 25 miles away from land, in a completely different direction, actually closer to the towns of Porter and Taunton.
25 miles off course. That's a massive discrepancy. It completely changed the focus of the search.
Totally. It's hard to understand how he could have been that mistaken about his location, but the cell tower data doesn't lie about the general area. Maybe the darkness, the back roads.
And remember, cell tower data back then wasn't like pinpoint GPS. It gives you a broader area, a radius based on which tower your phone connects to. Still, 25 miles is significant.
So the search shifts entirely to this new area near Porter and Taunton. And sure enough, they find his car.
Exactly where he said it was, stuck in a ditch off a gravel road right near the county line between Lyon and Lincoln counties.
In the car itself, it just looked stuck. You know, no signs of a struggle around it, no damage suggesting a violent encounter, just a car in a ditch.
But Brandon wasn't there.
No, and neither were his keys, his cell phone, or critically, his glasses. Remember, he was legally blind in one eye. He needed those glasses.
Yeah.
All gone. Just the empty car.
And the theory about the lights he saw, based on that actual location near Taunton.
The authorities think it was probably lights from a grain elevator nearby. Some of those have bright lights, maybe a red one on top, that you could see from a long way off in the dark, flat landscape. He might have mistaken that for the lights of Lind.
Plausible. It explains the location confusion, maybe? But it doesn't explain what happened after he yelled and the call dropped.
Exactly. And that leads to the search effort itself, which was, well, enormous.
That's huge. The initial search zone was over 120 square miles. It eventually expanded to an area of interest covering 140 square miles.
Hundreds of volunteers turned out. They had planes and helicopters for air surveillance, teams searching waterways, people on ATVs covering ground, and a really significant number of search dogs.
Yeah, the sources mentioned 34 different dog handlers, highly trained teams coming in from 9 different states to help out. This wasn't a small effort.
It went on for a long, long time, too. Active searching continued for over 120 days, making it one of the biggest searches of its kind in Minnesota's history. People like Jeff Hasse and Ken Anderson, the search managers, have stayed involved for, well, over a decade now.
And those dogs, they provided one of the most tantalizing but also frustrating clues.
Right. A canine unit managed to pick up Brandon's scent right from his abandoned car.
And they tracked it for about 3 miles, leading. Where?
Directly towards the Yellow Medicine River. The scent trail reportedly just stopped, went cold, right at the riverbank.
But there's more to that, isn't there? Some sources mention something else.
Yeah, this is fascinating. Some accounts say the dogs actually picked the scent up again on the other side of the river. They followed it for a little ways along a gravel road over there before losing it for good.
Across the river. That adds another layer, doesn't it? Did he fall in? Did he somehow cross it?
It definitely made the river a huge focus. It was searched multiple times, like dozens of times. Dive teams, sonar technology, everything.
But nothing was ever found. No sign of Brandon, no phone, no glasses, nothing in the water. And that river, it's tricky. Parts of it are apparently up to 15 feet deep, lots of submerged trees, snags. Things can get hidden easily.
Yeah, very difficult search conditions.
Yeah.
Later on, years later, the dog teams kept alerting to a different area. Northwest of Porter, I think.
That's right. Multiple trained dogs, on separate occasions, indicated the possible presence of human remains in that specific area.
But again, despite digging and focus searches there, nothing definitive has ever been found. Just these persistent alerts from the dogs.
And then there's another complicating factor in this vast rural search area: access to private land.
Yeah, this has been a recurring issue. The search area covers a lot of farmland. Sources say some landowners, especially cattle farmers, have refused to let search teams, even the specialized dog teams, onto their property.
Why? What were their concerns?
Primarily concerns about damaging crops or, the dogs disturbing their livestock. Understandable concerns from their perspective, maybe, but frustrating for the searchers.
And the authorities can't just force their way onto the land.
Not without probable cause. They need some actual evidence, some factual reason to believe evidence related to Brandon's disappearance is on that specific property. And without that, they can't get a warrant to compel access.
So it creates these gaps, geographic holes, as the search managers apparently call them. Areas within the main zone that just haven't been thoroughly searched.
Exactly. They try to work around planting seasons, harvest times, but it's a constant challenge.
And meanwhile, tips still come in sometimes to the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension or the sheriff's office.
Yeah, they do. But the sources say they often turn out to be like third-hand information, rumors, stuff that doesn't pan out, leads that go nowhere.
So the hard truth is, beyond finding the car that first day, no new physical evidence related to Brandon has ever surfaced. None.
Which leaves us with theories. Try and piece together what might have happened based on the very limited, confusing facts we do have. The stuck car, the long call, the location mistake, that sudden, oh saint, the missing stuff, the huge search, the scent trail.
Okay, let's walk through the main ones. The most prominent theory, probably, given the dog scent trail ending at the river and Brandon mentioning hearing water.
Accidental drowning.
Right. He gets near the river in the dark, missteps, falls in. The, oh, saint, is his reaction as he tumbles. And like we said, bodies can be incredibly hard to find in rivers like that.
Makes sense on some levels, but the counter-arguments. His dad was right there on the phone. Wouldn't he have heard a splash? Or yelling, struggling sounds after the initial curse?
That's a fair point. The sources don't mention his father hearing anything like that. And again, despite all the searches, they never found him or his phone or anything in that river.
Okay, so if not drowning, what else? Exposure, hypothermia.
Possible. He was out there walking for a long time, maybe disoriented, maybe got wet crossing streams or near the river. The sources mentioned it was a wet spring. If he collapsed somewhere out in those fields or woods due to the cold and exhaustion.
Finding him afterwards would be like searching for a needle in a haystack, especially in a less traveled spot.
Exactly. Then there are other kinds of accidents people speculate about.
Like falling into something.
Yeah, online forums sometimes discuss maybe an old, unmarked well shaft or a cistern. Sources mention the state had a program to cap old wells, so maybe less likely, but not impossible out in the country.
And some of that online speculation tries to link that idea to the farmers who wouldn't allow searches. Right? Though that's just people connecting dots without proof.
Pure speculation, yes. Another accident theory is maybe he fell into some other unseen hazard, a deep ditch, a crevice, maybe a marshy or boggy area he couldn't get out of in the dark.
There's also some darker speculation online, isn't there?
Yeah.
About farm equipment.
Yes. Again, this is purely from online discussions, not official sources, but some theorize he might have collapsed from injury or exhaustion and then accidentally been run over by farm machinery later, perhaps in the morning, and maybe the operator panicked and disposed of the remains. It's a grim thought and totally unproven.
Definitely unproven. Which brings us to the possibility of foul play.
Always a consideration when someone vanishes like this. The sudden end to the call, the fact he disappeared so completely, leaving personal items behind, it makes some people suspicious.
His mother, Annette, has actually said publicly she suspects foul play. She mentioned wondering if maybe someone was hiding out there by the river and ambushed him.
And online theories run the gamut. Maybe hit by a car whose driver then panicked and hid the body. Maybe shot for trespassing. Maybe just a random violent encounter out in the middle of nowhere.
But what do the police say about foul play?
Officially, they've always maintained there's no evidence of it. Nothing at the car scene suggested violence. And crucially, his parents didn't report hearing any sounds of a struggle or another voice during that final moment of the call. Just Brandon's exclamation and then silence.
So, while some people feel strongly it was foul play, the known facts make it hard to substantiate.
Right. Although it is noted his case is listed in the FBI's VICAP database, the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program.
What does that mean exactly? Does it imply they suspect foul play?
Not necessarily. VICAP is used for various things, including trying to link potentially related violent crimes, but it's also used for complex, long-term missing person cases where the circumstances are unusual, even if foul play isn't proven. So its inclusion is interesting, but the sources don't spell out the specific reason it was added here.
Okay. One last possibility people sometimes mention, though it seems unlikely.
A staged disappearance. Or maybe amnesia.
Yeah. Could he have just decided to walk away from his life? Or maybe hit his head, got amnesia, and wandered off, not knowing who he was?
Authorities and his family find this highly improbable. Given his personality, his close family ties, it just doesn't fit who he was. Plus, 17 years later, you'd expect some kind of sighting, a trace, an instance of him using his identity somewhere, even accidentally, and there's been nothing.
So looking at all these theories, drowning, exposure, accident, foul play, it's striking how the few clues we have, the water sounds, the dog trail, the sudden end of the call, can be interpreted to fit such different narratives.
Absolutely. Without that one key piece of evidence, that smoking gun, you can make a plausible argument for several scenarios. It leaves everything hanging in this realm of uncertainty.
But amidst all this tragedy and uncertainty, something positive did actually come out of this case. A legal change.
That's right. Brandon's parents, Brian and Annette, went through that awful initial experience with law enforcement being hesitant to start a search because he was 19, an adult, with no immediate proof of foul play.
They didn't want other families to face that same delay in those critical early hours.
So his mother, Annette, became a real advocate. She campaigned tirelessly for a change in Minnesota law.
And she succeeded. In July 2009, Minnesota passed Brandon's Law.
What does Brandon's law do?
It mandates that police in Minnesota must immediately take a missing person report and begin an investigation for any missing person under the age of 21,
Yeah.
not just children, and also for older adults if they disappear under circumstances deemed suspicious.
So it removes that initial gray area, that delay his parents face, because he was technically an adult. It prioritizes immediate action for young adults.
Exactly. It's a direct legacy of Brandon's case,
All right.
aimed at helping other families in that terrible situation.
A meaningful change born from unimaginable pain.
But despite Brandon's Law, despite the massive search efforts, despite all the media attention over the years, Brandon Swanson himself remains missing.
Still gone. No physical trace found since that car was located back in 2008.
All those core elements, the confusion about where he actually was, that abrupt, unexplained end to the phone call, the missing glasses and phone, the vast and difficult search terrain, those issues with accessing some private land, it all combines to make this an incredibly difficult, unsolved case.
His family, though, they haven't stopped hoping or searching. They continue to keep his story alive, keep his face out there.
Yeah, the sources mentioned his parents still leave their porch light on for him every single night since he disappeared, just waiting. He has nephews now he's never met.
The lack of closure, the not knowing, it's an ongoing trauma for them. 17 years of living with that absolute uncertainty.
So we've done this deep dive into the sources on Brandon Swanson. We've looked at the facts of the night he vanished, that chilling phone call, the shocking location mistake, the immense search and its limitations, and all the theories that try to explain the inexplicable.
It really starts set ordinarily, doesn't it? A common problem, car in a ditch. But it just dissolves into this complete mystery.
And maybe that's why it sticks with people. That shift from the mundane to the completely baffling.
I think so. And the total lack of hard evidence leaves every possibility feeling, well, possible. Accident, foul play, something else entirely. Nothing can be definitively ruled out based on what we know.
We've sifted through everything we could find, pulled out the key details, the main lines of thought. But like so many real-life mysteries, there's no neat conclusion here. It just underscores how, even with all our technology and information, some things remain stubbornly unknown.
Yeah. Brandon Swanson's case really forces us to confront that uncertainty, doesn't it? What does it mean for his family, his community, and maybe for you listening now, when the facts point everywhere and nowhere all at once, when the most important piece of the puzzle, the person himself, is just missing? What part of this deep dive resonates most strongly with you?